Hi everyone, this is the third session in my masterclass and it jumped the queue. It was going to be a hardware review, that's coming next time. In this session we're going to dissect and reconstruct a triple solve, but not just any triple solve. Here's the story. There I was out in the garden on a sunny Saturday afternoon with 4 of my kids who were playing very happily. I checked all was in order and the conditions were right for a cube juggle, so I took out the cubes. And then immediately landed my most ambitious triple solve to date. A triple solve baked 3 ways. The first with my left hand, the second with my right hand, and the third with both hands. Not at the same time, obviously. That was a first for me. I don't know whether it's a world first. I'm sure that other people have done that before, but not recorded it. And I thought this would be a good one for reconstruction purposes. So I'm going to try and reconstruct as much as I can of the solve, what I was thinking about, the problems I faced, at each stage what I needed to do, and also the specific algorithms that I faced at the last layer. And this is rather special, not just because it's my 100th video, but also because it's almost exactly the anniversary of my cube juggling journey. You can see my very first attempts in my first video on this channel at making just one turn on a single cube as I juggled and tried to solve it. Well, it didn't go very well. You can check it out, it's up here, and there's a link in the description as well. But without further ado, let's dive in. First things first, I made sure that I was in a position with good lighting. Most of my cube juggling to date has been in the garden. If you're juggling against a window, you have the backlight, which makes it a bit more difficult to see the colours. If you're juggling in an artificially lit room, often the artificial lighting is more yellow than white, and that can make it more difficult as well. Of course, starting, as I always need to do and must encourage you to do as well, is to have a soft landing. So I use a partly inflated old camping mattress. It actually deflates because it has a puncture, but it's good enough. Now the scrambles. I have no idea what I started with. I don't do computer scrambles. I'm not at the moment interested in increasing my speed or efficiency, just to enjoy it and to get more familiar with the skill. Since I can't work backwards to recreate the exact scrambles that I did, I'm going to scramble these ones up and then talk about the principles of what I do. 1, 2, 3. I start the juggle solve without even having looked at cube number 1. All of my inspection takes place mid-air. And a very good reason for that is that cube numbers 2 and 3, you have to do that. Unless you have a look at all 3 beforehand and memorize which ones are which, I don't want cube number 1 to have any advantage over the other 2 cubes. Because when you get to these 2, after you've solved this one, the psychological drain kicks in and it becomes more difficult already to do these. Of course, there's the physical thing too. You're already tired by that point, which I'm going to focus on more in this masterclass later in the series. Now, of course, for me, there were some specific things I needed to think about too. I was employing a dynamic risk assessment to make decisions in the moment about whether I needed to abandon the solve for the sake of my kids who I was supervising. I would suggest that probably better to avoid that if you can. I also didn't position myself very well outside. There's a ledge and I was situated quite close to that ledge and had to reposition myself once or twice just to avoid the possibility of, or the thought of, falling off. So let's focus on the cross with the first cube. So here are the cubes. Here's cube number 1, but let me just introduce Frankencube to you. This is the one I'm now forced to use because I've lost my 4th good RS3M V5. So next session's unboxing is all the more important. Let's just move these to the side for a moment. Okay, we've started the juggle solve by this point. I select one cube to have a look at. I'm not actually specifically trying to find the best because I know I'm going to have to do the other ones at some point anyway. So for example, this one already you can see there's a white connected edge. I solve yellow cross or white cross, and all I'm looking for at this point is something that's connected. If yellow has something connected, I'll select that. If white has, I'll select that. It's no more complicated than that. If there are no edge pieces in place, I will simply go for something and find an easy to connect edge. Let's say, for example, that in this case yellow didn't have any connected edges. I would probably go with, oh well look, there's one there. That orange, I know I can move in one flick with my left hand. I'm only doing U or, well, the equivalent of R, or let's call it D. So I've selected white cross. All I want to do is, as quickly as possible, move it out of the checkerboard, give myself some visual clues to work with. So I am not interested in doing the most efficient solve. I wouldn't be looking to get this red-white edge out of place first, because I can see one here that I can slot in, and all the better. We know, of course, that blue will just slot in there. Now, this is actually quite a nice one. The next one will be a ring finger flick, and then a rotation and a ring finger flick. A rotation through the juggle, of course. I wouldn't be rotating it in the hand. A ring finger flick up there, and now anti-clockwise, and then a ring finger flick on the next catch, and then of course just adjust with a U prime. That's how I would do the cross on that one. We'll leave that there. Let's just look at the other two, see if there's anything else that I can explain through this. On this occasion, we've got both the white and the yellow with a connected edge. We've actually got quite a few blocks going on as well, but we're going to ignore those. And it will depend on what my eyes zone in on first. So it might be that I see that the orange-yellow edge is there and ready to go up into the yellow cross, or it might be that I've seen this one here. In this case, let's just say it's the yellow, and we know we're going to have to flick this way, which we wouldn't do as a U move, we would do as a ring finger flick, and then another ring finger flick up there, and then a double move, might be able to do that in one, and then another ring finger flick up there, and then see where the blue is. I'm not planning ahead, and then a double move. And then, of course, another double move up here to solve the cross. That's probably enough on cross. Let's go straight to F2L. Let's go back to our first cube. F2L is probably the trickiest part of the solve and takes the longest, as of course it does for regular solving as well. Inspection is tricky. As usual with one-handed solving and general solving, the cross is going to be generally on the bottom. My F2L is not especially efficient. I've tended to learn it intuitively. I would be looking for something that has an edge or a corner on top, preferably not with the white face up. So on this occasion I might see the orange and green, and this is actually a particularly good one, of course, because we can flick it up with the ring finger. At this point I would be rotating, flick it out of the way so that I can quickly reconnect and have that visual block of the cross completed. Then of course rotate and U prime, and then might do a double move on the top, but would more likely do that in 2 moves, and then a ring finger flick up into the cross. I would never choose to do that case. Solvers, give me some suggestions as to how you would do that efficiently and in a way that preserves a lot of the cross down here. I would be much more comfortable going for this one here, which is a very similar case, but well, it's a connected edge. And I should have said, of course, if there are 3 pairs, you'll pick that up quite quickly during the inspection of F2L. That's something you should go with first. Now, I might have done that one, or I might have seen that this is a nice one too. So we have the opportunity to flick this one up and get them ready to connect. And then again, another ring finger flick, and then a flick back to preserve the cross. And now we've got to just flick it once, and then ring finger flick, another ring finger flick, and then index finger flick. So we've now got a 2x3 block. Of those that are remaining, I would probably not do this one here, because I might have seen that it's not going to connect with this edge on a single move. On this occasion, probably what I would do is disconnect the pair by bringing it up, and then across, and then back round, and then another ring finger to get it back into the cross and to have the opportunity to put this where we want it. And then a double move at the top, ring finger flick, out the way, index finger. Now at this point I would either choose to do a sledge or to insert in the usual way. More often than not I would choose to do a sledge, because I know that I can get one move in. It depends. If I manage at this point to do a double move, I find it less disruptive to avoid doing sledges, because it keeps more of the blocks in place. If, however, more likely I've only got it to that point, I would then do a sledge. Like that. And then the final pair you just have to do. So in this case I would connect it there, ring finger up, ring finger across, index finger across, and then get it in place. Now here's an opportunity to save one move against what you might normally do for OH solving. What I might do here for OH solving, because it feels nice, is, well, R, U2, R prime, U2, R, U, and then R prime. This is where we got to at this point. We can just do a U prime, and then because the rotations don't really matter for juggle solving, you're rotating it as you're throwing it, we can then connect it this way. So you've temporarily dislodged that edge as well. U2, put it back, and then put that back as well. I would often do that instead while juggle solving, because of course if you can save some moves, best to do so. So cross and F2L, similar things that I did on each of the 2 other cubes as well. Now we're going to focus on the last layer algorithms, OLLs and PLLs, that I actually faced for these 3 cubes as I juggle solved them, and a problem case I had too. So at this point I'm going to get all the cubes ready to show you the last layer. So this is the first one I faced, a big lightning bolt on the left hand. This is a good one to explain something that I do, because I solve one-handed in both hands, and therefore I have the choice to select which algorithm I want to use if I have one which can be mirror imaged in the right. For example here. This is the same one if I am to solve it from my right hand, but they're not of course the same moves. That would be an L instead of an R prime. If I actually had this one, I wouldn't solve this. I don't like solving this algorithm, this case. I prefer to solve this one. So what I would do instead is treat it as if I'm solving it from the right hand and start like this, because you're going to have to rotate it all over the place anyway. So I would start with a ring finger move, and then I would go for an index finger move and do it that way. As it is, I got the left hand case that I like, so it's a familiar case. So I would start by doing the algorithm but reconstructing it, not in the way you would do it normally, which is an R prime, then an F. It's going to be rotating and then an index finger flick, and then ring finger flick here, ring finger flick on this side, and so on and so forth. So until you get the whole algorithm to PLL. Now we face G-perm. I solve all 4 cases with the left hand, I solve all 4 cases on the right hand. I can't remember which ones are which, but I would never start with AUF on my algorithms. I would always just rotate it into the right place first. So of course, again, we don't do it in the way that we would do it for a normal one-handed solve. We've got to do it differently. Like this, that, and then of course a ring finger flick, ring finger, and then upside down, U, and then the double move. Finally, what about AUF? If you are learning to cube juggle and you're practicing as I did with just PLLs or OLLs, adjust it by 1 or 2 moves, because the likely situation is you will have to do that in a cube juggle solve. So why not practice it now before you reach it for the first time, when the nerves are kicking in, when the tiredness is setting in. Make sure you've practiced it beforehand. There's cube number 1. Cube number 2 I solved just with my right hand. Cubenstein here, or Frankencube. Now this is OLL 52. Now I use a symmetrical algorithm for this one. So it's this one here, ready? I struggled with this one when I juggle solved this second cube. I made a mistake somewhere and had to reconstruct. We are going to cover recovery and reconstruction during a solve, because it is one of the worst things that you can face when cube juggling, particularly on one of the later cubes. Anyway, I tried OLL 52 and for some reason I made a mistake somewhere. I might have done, I don't know, U prime instead of a U at that point. And that's quite a common thing in cube juggling, because you do not have any muscle memory to rely on. You have to work with knowing and looking for the visual clues that you're faced with. So I know that on this one, the center block always remains intact, and the R and R prime moves oscillate. So if I've done one of those, I know that the next one must be that one. However, it didn't work for me on this occasion, and what I ended up with was this one. A nice 6-mover T-shape, and I'm solving it not this way for the left hand, but this way for the right. It's another symmetrical algorithm. It starts not with a thumb F move, but a ring finger flick, and then of course another ring finger flick there, and then another ring finger flick there, and then we're on to index finger flicks. Index finger flicks are much more straightforward than the ring finger flicks. You're holding it in a balanced way with the cube already supported, and you can do that flick more easily than doing the ring finger flick down here, and also the cube is not supported and there's a risk that it can fall out. I'll be covering finger tricks in one of the later sessions in the masterclass. But for now, we're solving it with the index finger flicks, and then another one there, and then another one there. And we're left with another G-perm. So again, it's a rotation, and we're solving it in the same way as I've described before. So it's a ring finger flick to start with, and then it's a ring finger flick up here, index finger flick, and then an index finger, then a ring finger, and then the double. And then so index finger, ring, index finger, ring finger that way, index finger, ring, double move. 2 cubes solved out of 3. Third cube now, and I am going for index flicks with both hands. Anti-clockwise on this hand, and clockwise on this hand. And those are much more comfortable flicks, and that's what I learned to begin with. And I've only recently started doing full solves with my right hand or my left hand while juggle solving. So on this occasion we've got to use wide moves, but we can't do wide moves very easily with cube juggling. I never do wide moves while cube juggling, and so what we need to do is find a way of approximating that. So what are we going to do? We need to decide which way we're going to solve it first. Well, I might decide I'm solving it from my right hand and do the equivalent of an R wide, or from my left hand and do the equivalent of an R prime wide. So let's just say we select the left hand move. It doesn't really matter, because actually in this case we're doing the same thing. So what we need to do is do the equivalent, which is flick the blue layer anti-clockwise, 1, turn, like that. Now, what this means, of course, is that we've now lost our reliable base. The red is on the base now, the orange is on top, green is on the R side and blue on the L side, and our faithful white is now at the back. Now this can become quite disorientating while juggle solving, and it's also why the dot cases are typically a bit trickier with juggle solving than other cases. So what we need to do is know what we're looking for. I am looking for these 2 bars of yellow, or the layer that we're solving, and I know the next moves because I'm familiar with what to look for. And this is the point, you don't have muscle memory. You need to make sure you know what to look for at each point, so that at any step you know what the next step is going to be. So in this case I know it's going to be an index finger flick there, and then I know it's going to be an index finger flick that way, and then another one there, and then another one this way, and then of course a double move, and then another clockwise move there. Now we've got T-perm. Now we can solve this either from the left hand this way or from the right hand this way. And for juggle solving, you have the choice. I can either do this to begin with, or I can do that to begin with. What I'm going to need to remember is which face is the equivalent of R. This is the L face, of course, but for me, I treat that as R because I look at the mirror case images for my right hand. It's that, and then it's another anti-clockwise, and then that, clockwise turn, another clockwise to move it out of the way. This is where it can get a little bit disorientating, but we need to remember, okay, well if the green is our R face, then orange must be our F face, and we need to do the equivalent of this move next. So there it goes. And then a double move for the green. Well, of course you can either be in the left hand or the right hand. Let's say it's spinning around a bit. Where was the 2x2 block? If we lose our orientation, but we know we're turning green, no matter how many times we turn it, by accident or on purpose, we know we're going to have to end up here. And then we can stop turning at that point. And then of course it's index, 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 index on the left, index on the left, index on the right, index on the right. It's worth just pausing at this point because you know you have 1 move left of the final cube. Don't be surprised if your hands are wobbling a bit, if your heart is racing, if your knees start to shake, and you start to breathe a little faster. Slow it down. Just remember why you're doing it. It's something that you enjoy doing, and it does not matter if this cube falls or if any of the other cubes fall at this point. Of course it will be really disappointing, but try and remember your training at this point. All we're trying to do is to get the cube into a position where you can do that final turn. Solved. Okay folks, that's the reconstruction as far as I was able to do it. I hope it helps you to learn how to cube juggle, or at least gives you an insight into the sorts of things that I'm thinking about as I do a triple solve. Next up in the masterclass is the hardware review, and there are some new entrants into the hardware review that only just arrived in the last week. I'll be unboxing and juggle solving cubes straight out of the box. Thanks for watching. Till next time.